There were not any huge important trials in immuno-oncology presented at this meeting, but there were little trickles of some information, some long-term outcome data that supported good results, as we might have expected. There were some combinations of immuno-oncology agents, and there was a little bit of work on integrating these in first-line therapy. Let me start with you, Janet. What did you think? Do you have any sense of any buzz about this and where you hope to see things going? Are there people talking about this online? I should note that the patients with the driver mutations are often the ones who have not been the biggest beneficiaries. And
Yes.
Is that really perceived out there, or is there so much enthusiasm about immuno-oncology that it's overtaking the targeted therapies?
I have actually, when I was at the SPORE meeting, talked to some other professionals and also have talked to patients. The hype about immunotherapy is so overwhelming, and the press is not exactly discriminate in the way they report their headlines, that I have heard patients who have a driver mutation turn down targeted therapy because immunotherapy will cure me. So there's an issue with that. That said, there's a lot of hope with immunotherapy, and I walked into the developmental therapeutics poster session, and there's over 300 posters with different types of immunotherapy in development. So I think it's wonderful that we're going that way. I would like to make sure that we're careful in how we combine things and we don't just stick two drugs together because we have them. Mm-hmm. I saw one study that had, at another session, that had 95% of patients had grade 3 toxicities because they put two immunotherapies together, mm-hmm. and they didn't have any preclinical data ahead of time. Mm-hmm. So great, let's do the trials and know what we're doing.
Ram, what did you think of? I mean, what was the pulse of immuno-oncology for lung cancer in your sense?
So we now have 2 drugs approved for lung cancer, Keytruda and Opdivo, mm-hmm. and these are for patients with advanced stage disease after their cancer had progressed on chemotherapy. So the main areas where the field is heading now is to see whether you can give it even before chemotherapy, and those trials should read out in the next 3 to 6 months. So we'll find out whether chemotherapy will be displaced even further down. In terms of how do we make these immunotherapy drugs work for a larger number of patients, how do we make them work better? Combination approaches are really where everybody is heading to. The combination that's been studied the most in lung cancer and beyond is combining the CTLA-4 and PD-1 targeted drugs, ipilimumab and nivolumab, or like that approach. We learned from a study in non-small cell and a study in small cell that these combinations seem promising. They do have additional toxicities compared to Opdivo or Keytruda. In these studies, though, they are highly selected patients, so the numbers don't seem too scary, at least in the lung cancer patient population, and seem to be in the realm of what most patients would be willing to accept if they had a better chance of a better outcome. But as we roll these trials out to the larger community, we're going to see what the real safety profile is, and that would largely drive how these agents are going to be used.
Yeah, I think there's several things to be concerned about, particularly with the combinations, aside from the cost issues, which are formidable. But as you say, the toxicity issues are at least a little, if not a lot more challenging, and that is in controlled situations and selected patients. In the real world, there may be a lot of rank and file general oncologists who can't give the same level of support and may be less selective, and in general, with lung cancer patients often having less favorable a performance status, being quite a bit older than an average melanoma patient, it would be, I think, not prudent to presume that the tolerability is going to be just as good.
And you were also mentioning about online buzz. I have heard of some doctors that are choosing to forego testing for PD-L1 and just giving the patient the immunotherapy because it's still about the same chance of being effective as chemo. So they'll give it a shot.
Well, certainly in the second line setting, that's why it'd be done.
Yeah.
I don't know that in the first line that would even be feasible. We'll have to see what the data show. Everett, what did you think?
Yeah, I think you characterized it right. There was no new landmark observations, but I do think for the combination of IPI and NIVO, very good data, both in small cell and in non-small cell.
IPI being ipilimumab.
Yervoy.
CTLA-4 in
Yervoy.
Yervoy is
Um,
its commercial
And-
name. Yeah. Mhm.
And Nivo is,
Opdivo.
Opdivo.
okay.
And giving those two in combination showing very good activity in two subsets of lung cancer. So I thought Scott Antonio's presentation for small cell was very well executed, suggesting that here you might actually need the combination for it to work optimally. I think it's a hint at this point, it's not definitive, but I think that looked good. And then in non-small cell, the idea, because they did this, right, they took a few patients to surgery and showed that there was no tumor left. That is the first time that I've actually heard, maybe I haven't forgotten, but I don't think I have ever heard about a systemic agent truly what it appears to have done, eradicate a tumor. Now these are in small numbers, but I thought these were very, very convincing data as a hypothesis moving forward. And it's actually the first time that I thought this is more than just marketing, putting two drugs together that seem to work. There may be something behind this, and that will then lead very, very much to questions we haven't addressed today, which have to do with value and cost. Because as you combine two very expensive agents in a common disease, it's no longer hypothetical. This would exceed, capacity to pay.
Right. Well,
And-
I think
and-
we're going to cure cancer before we fix that problem.